Luffy is the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates and is currently one of the strongest pirates traveling the waters of the New World. Holding the title of one of the 4 Emperors of the Sea, Luffy has built a reputation as one of the most promising rookies of the Great Pirate Era. As him and his crew have travelled and faced powerful foes, one after the other, Luffy has continually been seen to best even the toughest opponents. His sheer tenacity and willpower to become the king of the pirates has led him to exponentially gaining massive amounts of strength, with him being one of the most powerful figures within the One Piece world. Alongside the rise of Luffy's story came the massive successes of 2 other very beloved series, being Naruto and Bleach, collectively being referred to as the Big 3 of Shonen. As to be expected, it was only a matter of time before the main characters of these shows were put against each other and their stories to see how they'd fare against the best the others had to offer. Hey guys, Luke06 here, and today I'll be dropping our favourite Straw Hat captain into the world of Naruto in a short series of 5 different videos where we'll see how he compared to the major villains of the Narutoverse. Will Luffy be able to best them, or will he fall short of the heavy hitters? So, without wasting any more time, let's see how Luffy would fare against the best antagonists Naruto Shippuden has to offer. So, before we get into the matchups, I think it's important that we establish the ground rules for how this will work. We will be putting Luffy against 5 villains from Naruto Shippuden, excluding the original series and Boruto, which we can cover in potential later videos. The villains we'll be putting Luffy against are Pain, Itachi, Obito, Madara, and Kaguya. Firstly, we'll be starting off with Pain. I'll be selecting both the versions of the antagonists as well as the specific battles against them, which Luffy will take the role of whoever's fighting them, such as replacing Naruto and Sasuke respectively against Pain and Itachi. When it comes to Luffy, I'll be selecting the weakest version of him I believe can beat the character and working my way up until he either clears them all or I believe he can't go any further. We'll be summarising the fights as they happen within the series and debating the differences Luffy would make in the positions of the person who's fighting them. When it comes to Luffy's powers, his Devil Fruit will act how a Kike Genkai would. I will allow a certain degree of verse equalization with Haki and Chakra, however, with them fundamentally working different, I won't allow either side to copy abilities, but I will allow things like Energy Drain, which would basically be Chakra Absorption. I won't go over Luffy's abilities in this video, however, there will be a link down in the description to a video where I cover his abilities in depth if you want to give it a watch. As I release future parts, they'll also be linked in the description of this video. Just to add a little bit more, I just wanted to say this video is purely for entertainment and pretty much everything I say will be up for debate. There are many different ways these matches could go, and my own interpretation is one of many. If you do have a difference in how you think things would play out, then feel free to leave your own thoughts down in the comments. I do want this to be an open debate, so feel free to use this video as reference for or to elaborate your own viewpoints in the comments. This video also won't go heavy into the power scaling and math side of things. Instead, most of it will be focused on how abilities and characters would interact with each other. For times power scaling does come into play, I'll have links in the description to scalings and feats I use and agree with if you're interested. So, with all that said, let's begin the first matchup. Luffy vs Pain. Round 1. Luffy vs Pain. Pain's Assault Arc. Battlefield, destroyed Leaf Village. In the first matchup, Luffy takes the place of Naruto who fought against the 6 Paths of Pain. Unlike Naruto, however, Luffy is going against all of the 6 Paths by himself without any of the Toads from Mount Miyaboku. Starting off, I'll be using Luffy during the Dressrosa arc, which we can scale upwards if needed. Luffy lands in the recently destroyed Hidden Leaf Village and finds himself confronted by the 6 Paths of Pain after launching a Gum Gum Jet pistol down on the Ashura path that was going to attack Tsunade. For this scenario in particular, let's say Pain decided to stay in the village and finish off Tsunade after she decided to try and attack him in her injured state. Most of Luffy's intentions here would be figuring out where he was and the situation surrounding him, leading him to protect Tsunade and eventually engage Pain in combat. To the surprise of both Tsunade and Pain, Luffy completely destroyed the Ashura path. Following this, Tendo Pain would take up a defensive position until it could regain its power from the almighty push that destroyed the Leaf Village, and also to assess who Luffy was and what his role in this battle would be, and also what his abilities were. Tsunade would question who Luffy was, in which he would respond, "I'm Monkey D. Luffy, so where are we anyway?" Before anything else could be said, the army member would pull Tsunade to the safety of the remains of the Hidden Leaf Village. Assuming Luffy to be an ally of the Leaf, and one that managed to take down the Ashura path in a single move, Pain would engage Luffy to remove what he sees as a potential threat to him reaching Naruto. Realistically, I honestly think Pain would rather retreat in this situation as he no longer had any business with the Leaf Village. But that would remove the point of this video, and I don't believe it would be too far-fetched for Pain to fight Tsunade or Luffy in this situation. Pain would start by using the Animal Path to summon a giant rhino to charge at Luffy. Luffy would basically do the same thing that Naruto did, catching it by its head and either throwing it to the sky or slamming it to the ground. As more summons come in, Luffy would be able to push them away and deal with them using Gear 3rd. However, he'd noticed that there was a few he was unable to keep down for long. After launching a flurry of Gear 3rd attacks to keep them down, Luffy would come to realise that attacking the beasts themselves is pretty much useless. Luffy would then get the idea to focus on the animal path who originally summoned them. Rushing in towards the animal path, due to their visual links, it wouldn't have too much trouble dodging Luffy's attacks, who would more than likely be in his base form. After seemingly having the back foot against both the animal path and its defences, I could see Luffy activating Gear 2nd, in which the increase in speed, which is several times faster than the eye could see, could manage to overwhelm the animal path and take it down for good, getting rid of the summons. Predator Path would then rush Luffy just after and likely meet the same fate, being surprised by both his increase in speed and unorthodox fighting style, in which the Predator Path would also fall. Going back on what we just talked about, do I think Luffy in Gear 2nd and 3rd would be able to put up that level of performance and be comparable to Sage Mode Naruto? Honestly, I would say yes. Luffy in Gear 3rd after the time skip has had absolutely no trouble dealing with massive and powerful beasts, even being able to take down the Kraken underwater as they travel to Fishman Island. Not only that, but Luffy in the space was able to easily pick up, spin, and slam a giant in the Corridor Coliseum. This is similar from what we've seen of Naruto's strength in Sage Mode, being able to fling the animal path's beasts into the air and lift giant boulders no issue. Luffy is also very agile and fast, especially in Gear 2nd, where at this point in the series he would be multiple times faster than the eye can see. I could still see Pain being able to track and follow Luffy's movements, due to the Renegade's incredible perception, but more so than the speed, the issue would be Luffy's fighting style. Luffy doesn't rely on conventional taijutsu, which I could see this catching Pain off guard a few times. He uses no ninjutsu, which renders the Predator Path all but useless, and with taijutsu, Luffy could fight at any range. Back to the battle, running towards the remaining 3 paths, Luffy would use a Gear 3rd Elephant Gun or Grizzly Magnum in an attempt to take them down all at once. They would all dodge this however, in which Tendo Pain would go on the offensive to attack Luffy, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him land a few hits. Being more prepared for how Luffy fights, as well as his agility and speed, I can see Tendo Pain focusing on being more perceptive. This will put him and Luffy on much more even playing fields as the two match blows for a while. Unknown to Luffy however, the Naraka Path will go behind their backs to revive the animal path. Luffy would most likely find himself both confused and taken off guard as the beast that previously went after him appeared again. This would cause Tendo Pain to swoop back to the rest of the group to take up defense. After a short trade of blows against the beasts, Luffy would more than likely jump back to think of a way to beat them, as it felt to him like he wasn't making much progress, causing a temporary stall in the battle. During this time, Pain would more than likely revive the Predator Path if he hadn't done so already. At this moment, Luffy would more than likely realise that a Tendo Pain was special in some way, and more than likely the main target he should go after, seeming as how Tendo Pain had yet to show any abilities. It took up positions guarded by the others and was the main body that talked. Luffy would go back into Gear 2nd and rush past the other paths as fast as he could, making his way directly towards the Diva Path. Luffy would prepare a Gum Gum Red Hawk to take down Tendo Pain as fast as he could. However, he would be blown back by the almighty push as Pain regains his abilities. Attempting another rush at Tendo Pain, Luffy would get caught in his universal pull, taking a direct blow from the Predator Path and firmly being held by it. Tendo Pain would then go on to say that he had no idea who Luffy was or what his relation to the village was, but that either way he stood in the way of his ideal of true peace and that he would need to be dealt with. He would then ask Luffy who he thought he was to stand in the way of true peace and the ideals of a god. Luffy would respond by telling him to shut up and that he couldn't care less about his dreams or whatever, and that he was going to kick his ass even if there's 6 of him. Pain would be annoyed as what he sees to be a selfish response from Luffy, in which he states he will end this now so he doesn't become a nuisance in the future. Luffy would launch a Gum Gum Hawk stamp to the floor beneath him, freeing him from the Predator Path's grip. As both sides reset to their original positions, Pain would begin monologuing about his ideal of what true peace is and how he's going about achieving it, attempting to convince Luffy what he's doing is something righteous and that Luffy is nothing but a selfish child for saying he couldn't care less about Pain's dream of peace. Pain would then ask Luffy if that peace is not what he cares about in this world, then what is his idea of what the world should be? Luffy would respond by saying yeah, he in fact doesn't care less about what Pain wants and doesn't care for the path of peace he's talking about. He would say to him, his ideal world is one where he and his friends can smile and eat as much as they want. Pain would see this as a self-centered and quite frankly stupidly closed-minded ideal, in which he then says a child as stubborn as him isn't somebody who could ever understand what it means to change the world for the better, and that he should stay out of his way as the target he's after is the Nine-Tailed Shinchoki. Luffy would agree that he has no idea what it means to change the world for the better, but either way he couldn't care about changing it and that he'll do what he wants. And currently, Pain is in his way and stopping him from finding out where he was and how to get back to his crew, so Luffy would say he needs to kick his ass. At this point, Luffy would more than likely realise that he wouldn't be able to fight against them all at once, considering the animal path summons could keep him back, the Naraka path could revive any paths he knocked down, and he was incapable of getting near the Diva path. And with them now having a grasp on both Luffy's physical capabilities and powers, it would be even harder for him to beat them. So what would Luffy's next move be? At this point, I could see Luffy activating Gear 4. Pain would notice the amount of Haki Luffy was using to keep the form active and most likely be on his guard. With a new form, Pain would most likely expect to see Luffy's physical abilities increase to an even further level than before. In Gear 4th, Luffy would easily rush past the 4 paths and launch a Kongan at Tendo Pain. Being as high of an increase as Gear 4th is, this would most likely catch Pain by surprise, with him not having enough time to use the almighty push. Pain would also more than likely still be expecting a stretching attack rather than a close range compression strike. The Kongan would send Tendo Pain flying to the outskirts of the Leaf Village, if not beyond it. Recovering from the attack, Nagato would focus all of his chakra into Tendo Pain to match Luffy's increase in strength and speed. Taking 6 Tails Naruto's performance into account, I wouldn't say it'd be too far-fetched to say that Pain at his full power could match Gear 4th Luffy. Luffy would have a hard time getting close to Pain, even in Gear 4th. I wouldn't be surprised if Pain was able to keep Luffy at bay with his almighty push, and Pain's speed should be at least somewhat relative to Luffy in Gear 4th, as Pain was able to keep up with 6 Tails Naruto fairly well. However, Pain wouldn't really have all that much to damage Luffy either. None of Pain's taijutsus would even be able to scratch Luffy even if he got close. You could make an argument for the chakra rods being able to pierce Luffy, but I'd have to disagree on that. Luffy was able to take piercing attacks from Doflamingo point blank imbued with armament haki, and they bounced off of him with no harm done. Yet again, Pain would need to cause enough damage to the surrounding environment to launch the debris at Luffy or send him flying into it, both of which I don't see happening. Luffy would more than likely destroy or make his way around anything Pain sent his way. More than likely, Pain would be buying enough time to prepare his planetary devastation, continually avoiding and evading Luffy. Pain would prepare and launch the Black Sphere and begin the planetary devastation. Now, I don't think anything less than a King Kong gun would save Luffy here, but the question is the King Kong gun strong enough to destroy the planetary devastation, or destroy enough for Nagato to run out of chakra to keep the jutsu going? Honestly, it really depends. If we're talking about the planetary devastation when it captures Luffy when it's nearly formed, I don't see it being enough. To take down the planetary devastation, you need to be able to destroy the Black Gravity Orb. If Luffy was able to get near it early enough before it had too much mass on it, I could see Luffy being able to destroy it. But the way I see it going is Luffy trying to fly himself away from it only to be pulled into it, where at this point he would either lose or use the King Kong gun in hopes it will destroy it. Now, both of their respective attacks are generally considered to be within the island to large island levels of destruction, and if you really want to push it, country. In this video, I won't be going in depth for the maths, if, well, any. Instead, I'll leave some links down in the description which go over feats and scaling that I agree with if you're interested in reading up about it. I'll also open up the comment section towards this debate too. I'd be interested in hearing the conclusions you guys come to and how you see this. In this case, I'm willing to give Luffy the benefit of the doubt and say he would catch the jutsu early enough to be able to destroy it. Moving on, however, the truth of the matter is whether Luffy destroys the planetary devastation or not, it doesn't change the outcome of this battle anyway. Luffy during the Dressrosa arc would lose to Pain. If Luffy was able to destroy the jutsu, he'd have used enough haki to end up deflating and crashing to the ground. Comparing the two characters after using their strongest attacks, it's obvious that Luffy stands at a clear disadvantage. After using Gear 4th just once, Luffy was rendered totally defenseless and he could barely move. Not only that, but he couldn't use haki for 10 minutes, and this was before he used the King Kong gun, which taxes him even more. After the planetary devastation, Nagato could still move Tendo Pain around and use the almighty push and fight back against Naruto, so this would be the end for Dressrosa Luffy. Our next stop would be Luffy during the Whole Cake Island arc, specifically against Cracker, and nothing really changes unfortunately. Luffy would again deflate. The only difference is Luffy could move a little bit more to hide from Pain, but in the end, Pain would probably end up finding Luffy before his 10 minutes were up. Next, to Luffy when he fought Katakuri. Now, this is where things change. The fight would still stay the same up to this point mostly, the big difference being that Luffy can handle the drawbacks of Gear 4th a lot better than he did before. Luffy was able to move around and run perfectly fine, and he didn't look nearly as fatigued. He was also able to use his gears afterwards, even without his haki. Luffy would most likely be running around avoiding Pain as he's being chased, fighting if Pain got close enough but putting enough effort into it where he'd regain his haki. Jumping to a clearing outside the Leaf Village would be the final stage of the fight between these two. Luffy here has two big issues which I could see him unintentionally walking around. Firstly, he at this point has no idea of the chakra receivers or the fact that the Pains are dead bodies controlled by Nagato, which would make rounding this fight out harder. Secondly, he isn't aware of the 5-second gap between Tendo Pain's jutsus. Pain would charge at Luffy with a chakra receiver, and let's say he manages to pierce Luffy in his weakened state. Now, this is entirely headcanon and a complete hypothetical, but for the purposes of this video, let's say, similarly to Sage Mode Naruto, Luffy could sense the chakra flow of the receivers with his observation haki, which he notices has a path he can follow. He senses Nagato's location briefly with his haki before breaking Tendo Pain's receptor off, kicking him towards the rocks and removing the receiver. Now, I won't have it be a necessary win condition for Luffy to have to find Nagato and confront him, only for him to be able to render the Pains unable to fight. Therefore, if you don't think it would work this way, then you're free to disregard it, as it's not something that's necessary to progress his storyline. Continuing from here, Luffy would realise both him and Pain are weak, and especially considering the size of Pain's attack, Luffy would be able to tell that it was worn out, and seeing Nagato's condition, would focus more on direct attacks to send out Pain in quick succession. Luffy would more than likely enter Gear 2nd, in which he works around the second issue of Pain's jutsu timer. Luffy would more than likely throw a series of attacks towards Tendo Pain, who would eventually fall from it, due to both his weak state and jutsu delay. As it only took one Rasengan from Naruto to finally take down Tendo Pain, I could see a Gum Gum Jet Gatling, Red Hawk or well-placed Hawk Bazooka taking him down for good. And with that, we have Luffy's first victory of this series against Pain. And that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the story and format I decided to go with this topic. Now, just because I decided on specifically 5 antagonists to focus on doesn't mean that I won't do others or different versions of them. For example, if you wanted to see, let's say, Edo Tensei Nagato against Luffy, that's something I can do. I did enjoy making this video and coming up with my own unique storyline, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it just as much. As I've said before, I'd be interested in the feedback and opinions of you guys, so feel free to have a voice in my comment section. Anyway, that's all from me, so have a good week you guys. Therefore, if you don't think it would work this way, then you're free to disregard. Oh my god, there is no way. What is that voice crack?